Imagine it's the late 1980s, and you are a computer scientist on the verge of a major breakthrough that would propel the world even further into the computer age. You arrive at your office for the day and see a crudely wrapped package on your doorstep. Funny, you don't remember expecting anything. As you get your keys out to open the door, you reach down to pick up the package. This was the experience of 26 Americans across the country over the span of 2 decades. Of the 26 victims, 23 were injured, and 3 more were killed by the package bombs. Ted Kaczynski, more commonly known as the Unabomber because of the universities and airlines he targeted in his earlier bombings, was an independent domestic terrorist who operated from 1978 until he was eventually caught after a 20-year manhunt led by the FBI in 1996. The Unabomber's legacy has raised some ethical questions that Americans are left to face, with his manifesto raising concerns that are still extremely topical today. In this video, I will uncover the gripping tale of a brilliant but troubled mind, a story that unfolds against the backdrop of technological advancement. In the dark shadow of uncertainty his attacks have left looming over America almost 3 decades after his arrest. The Unabomber, born Theodore Kaczynski, emerged from the quiet suburbs of Chicago in 1942. A child prodigy with an exceptionally high IQ, he entered Harvard University at just 16 years old. But his brilliance was accompanied by a growing sense of alienation. Through his undergraduate and graduate programs at Harvard and Michigan respectively, Kaczynski almost avoided having any type of relationships with his peers. As he pursued a career in mathematics, he struggled with the changing world around him, a world increasingly dominated by technological advancements and societal shifts. Kaczynski's discontent led him to abandon his position as assistant mathematics professor at University of California in Berkeley in 1969, retreating to the wilderness of Montana. In this self-imposed isolation, he built a makeshift cabin without electricity or running water, seeking solace in nature and distracting himself from the encroaching technological society which he despised. The turning point came in the late 1970s, when Kaczynski's seclusion took a darker turn. Fueled by a radical ideology against industrialization, he embarked on a deadly campaign of bombings targeting individuals involved in modern technology. Kaczynski's issues with the direction society was headed towards would be vocalized in his controversial manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future. The bombs Kaczynski constructed were placed in unassuming packages and sent to the doorsteps of universities, airlines, and eventually homes and businesses, with the first incident occurring at the University of Illinois in 1978. These bombs were made using scrap metal and wood, making them extremely difficult to trace for authorities. His bombings would occur sporadically, taking long hiatuses, with some even being as long as 6 years. Despite the noble intentions he claims to have had for sending the bombs, it is obvious that Kaczynski was doing the acts of terrorism for his own selfish reasons. At one instance, Kaczynski had been inactive for over half a decade. However, after the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993, Kaczynski sent out 2 bombs within the span of just a few months. It was very clear that Kaczynski did not like being upstaged when it came to his criminal acts, which goes to contradict how he claims to have been doing these bombings to stop the forward march of technology, which he goes further into detail with in his manifesto. The 35,000-word manifesto, railing against the industrial technological society, was published by the Washington Post under the author F.C., who would eventually be revealed to be Kaczynski. The manifesto is perhaps the most interesting aspect of the Unabomber case. The dense critique of modern industrial society raises profound ethical questions, which are still extremely applicable to today's dates surrounding the role of artificial intelligence in society as we move forwards. Kaczynski sent his manifesto to the New York Times and Washington Post, threatening that if his work wasn't published, the bombings would continue. This put the media companies in a dilemma with massive stakes. Should they opt not to be in the clutches of this assailant, risking the possibility of another assault, or should they submit to his requests in the hope of saving lives and preventing future bombings? Excerpts from the manifesto, which were published, would end up being crucial to his arrest. It would be Ted's younger brother, David Kaczynski, who made the breakthrough that more than 100 agents from the FBI, U.S. Postal Service, and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms had been searching for the better part of 2 decades. David recognized his brother's distinctive writing style, rhetoric, and feelings towards technology in the excerpts which were published by the news companies, and connected the dots between the home journals of his hermit brother and the domestic terrorist who was the Unabomber. David turned his brother into the FBI, only on 2 conditions. The first, that his name would not be disclosed with the evidence, and the second, that his brother would not receive the death penalty if he was found guilty. After a tumultuous trial, in 1998, Theodore Kaczynski was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, where he would spend the rest of his life. On June 11, 2023, Ted was found dead in his jail cell. Kaczynski's manifesto, which condemned the relentless advance of technology and warned of its dehumanizing effects, are attitudes which have not eroded with time. In the past year, the question of artificial intelligence's role in society has brought the ideas proposed in Industrial Society and Its Future back into the spotlight of discussion on the global stage. One direct quote from his manifesto is eerily similar to a situation we find ourselves discussing today. If the machines are permitted to make all their own decisions, we can't make any conjectures as to the results, because it is impossible to guess how such machines might behave. We only point out that the fate of the human race would be at the mercy of the machines. It might be argued that the human race would never be foolish enough to hand over all power to the machines, but we are suggesting neither that the human race would voluntarily turn power over to the machines, nor that the machines would willfully seize power. What we do suggest is that the human race might easily permit itself to drift into a position of such dependence on the machines that it would have no choice but to accept all of the machines' decisions. As society and the problems that it faces become more and more complex, and as machines become more and more intelligent, people will let machines make more and more of their decisions for them, simply because machine-made decisions will bring better results than man-made ones. Eventually, a stage may be reached at which the decisions necessary to keep the system running will be so complex that human beings will be incapable of making them intelligently. At that stage, the machines will be in effective control. People won't be able to just turn off the machines, because they will be so dependent on them that turning them off would amount to suicide. While his violent actions are unequivocally condemned, the manifesto is undoubtedly topical in today's world, raising poignant questions that we, as humans, need to answer sooner rather than later. The situation proposed in the quote is something that humanity is no longer asked to imagine, but a reality that we must face. In the past month, the first Global Artificial Intelligence Summit was hosted in London, featuring global leaders including Vice President Kamala Harris, technology executives including Tesla Chief Executive Elon Musk, and the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Hundreds of scientists and tech executives had signed a one-sentence letter urging regulators to recognize the risk of extinction from AI as a threat akin to a pandemic or a nuclear war. These modern concerns about the relationship between humanity and machines we create strongly echo the same ideas Kaczynski brought forward in his manifesto. It is clear that Kaczynski was not alone in his fear of machines, and if anything, the mistrust in computers is only growing as our society continues to move further and further into the age of artificial intelligence. Kaczynski's views are radical and dangerous. Nevertheless, it is difficult to deny that some of his concerns are reasonable. It is clear that despite Kaczynski's being ahead of his time in terms of comprehending the extent to which technology has the potential to expand, his use of terrorism to halt the progress cannot be excused. Kaczynski should always be remembered as a despicable and violent domestic terrorist before any discussion of his manifesto. As we conclude our exploration into the Unabomber's unsettling legacy, we find ourselves standing at the crossroads of technological progress and ethical responsibility. Theodore Kaczynski's life, marked by a violent, misguided brilliance, forces us to reflect on the consequences of an unchecked pursuit of innovation. The Unabomber's Manifesto, a chilling critique of modern society, challenges us to consider the ethical implications of our technological trajectory. How do we balance progress with the preservation of our humanity? The Unabomber's violent methods are unambiguously condemned, yet his warnings of the unchecked progress of technology compel us to grapple with the moral quandaries embedded in his critique. In the end, the Unabomber's story serves as a tragic tale, prompting us to navigate the ever-evolving relationship between humanity and technology.